Section 7 of Philosophical Rudiments Concerning Government and Society by Thomas Hobbes. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jeffrey Church. Dominion, Chapter 5. Of the Causes and First Beginning of Civil Government. 1. That the laws of nature are not sufficient to preserve peace. 2. That the laws of nature and the state of nature are silent. 3. That the security of living according to the law of nature consists in the concord of many persons. 4. That the concord of many persons is not constant enough for a lasting peace. 5. The reason why the government of certain brute creatures stands firm in concord only, and why not of men. 6. That not only consent, but union also is required to establish the peace of men. 7. What union is. 8. In union, the right of all men is conveyed to one. 9. What civil society is. 10. What a civil person is. 11. What it is to have the supreme power, and what to be a subject. 12. Two kinds of cities, natural and by institution. 1. It is of itself manifest that the actions of men proceed from the will, and the will from hope and fear, insomuch as when they shall see a greater good or less evil likely to happen to them by the breach than observation of the laws, they will wittingly violate them. The hope therefore which each man hath of his security and self-preservation consists in this, that by force or craft he may disappoint his neighbour, either openly or by stratagem. Whence we may understand that the natural laws, though well understood, do not instantly secure any man in their practice, and consequently, that as long as there is no caution had from the invasion of others, there remains to every man the same primitive right of self-defence by such means as either he can or will make use of, that is, a right to all things, or the right of war. And it is sufficient for the fulfilling of the natural law, that a man be prepared in mind to embrace peace when it may be had. 2. It is a trite saying that all laws are silent in the time of war, but it is a true one. Not only if we speak of the civil, but also of the natural laws, provided they be referred not to the mind, but to the actions of men, by chapter 3, article 27. And we mean such a war as is of all men against all men, such as is the mere state of nature. Although in the war of nation against nation, a certain mean was wont to be observed, and therefore in old time there was a manner of living, and as it were a certain economy, which they called lestrocaine, living by rapine, which was neither against the law of nature, things then so standing, nor void of glory to those who exercised it with valour, nor with cruelty. Their custom was, taking away the rest, to spare life, and abstain from oxen fit for plough, and every instrument serviceable for husbandry. Which yet is not so to be taken, as if they were bound to do thus by the law of nature, but that they had regard to their own glory herein, lest by too much cruelty they might be suspected guilty of fear. 3. Since therefore the exercise of the natural law is necessary for the preservation of peace, and that for the exercise of the natural law security is no less necessary, it is worth the considering what that is which affords such security. For this matter nothing else can be imagined, but that each man provide himself of such meet helps, as the invasion of one on the other may be rendered so dangerous, as either of them may think it better to refrain than to meddle. But first, it is plain that the consent of 2 or 3 cannot make good such security, because that the addition but of one, or some few on the other side, is sufficient to make the victory undoubtedly sure, and heartens the enemy to attack us. It is therefore necessary, to the end the security sought for may be obtained, that the number of them who conspire in a mutual assistance be so great, that the accession of some few to the enemy's party may not prove to them a matter of moment sufficient to assure the victory. 4. Furthermore, how great soever the number of them is who meet on self-defence, if yet they agree not among themselves of some excellent means whereby to compass this, but every man after his own manner shall make use of his endeavours, nothing will be done. Because that, divided in their opinions, they will be a hindrance to each other. Or if they agree well enough to some one action, through hope of victory, spoil, or revenge, yet afterward, through diversity of wits and counsels, or emulation and envy, with which men naturally contend, they will be so torn and rent, as they will neither give mutual help nor desire peace, except they be constrained to it by some common fear. Whence it follows that the consent of many, which consists in this only, as we have already defined in the foregoing section, that they direct all their actions to the same end and the common good. That is to say, that the society proceeding from mutual help only, yields not that security which they seek for, who meet and agree in the exercise of the above-named laws of nature, but that somewhat else must be done, that those who have once consented for the common good to peace and mutual help, may by fear be restrained lest afterwards they again dissent, when their private interest shall appear discrepant from the common good. 5. Aristotle reckons among those animals which he calls politic, not man only, but divers others, as the ant, the bee, etc., which though they be destitute of reason, by which they may contract and submit to government, notwithstanding by consenting, that is to say, ensuing or eschewing the same things, they so direct their actions to a common end, that their meetings are not obnoxious unto any seditions. Yet is not their gathering together a civil government, and therefore those animals not to be termed political, because their government is only a consent, or many wills concurring in one object, not, as is necessary in civil government, one will. It is very true that in those creatures living only by sense and appetite, their consent of minds is so durable, as there is no need of anything more to secure it, and by consequence to preserve peace among them, than barely their natural inclination. But among men the case is otherwise. For first, among them there is a contestation of honor and preferment, among beasts there is none, whence envy and hatred, out of which arise sedition and war, is among men. Among beasts no such matter. Next, the natural appetite of bees and the like creatures is conformable, and they desire the common good, which among them differs not from their private. But man scarce esteems anything good, which hath not somewhat of eminence in the enjoyment, more than that which others do possess. Thirdly, those creatures which are void of reason see no defect, or think they see none, in the administration of their commonweals. But in a multitude of men, there are many who, supposing themselves wiser than others, endeavour to innovate, and divers innovators innovate divers ways, which is a mere distraction and civil war. Fourthly, these brute creatures, howsoever they may have the use of their voice to signify their affections to each other, yet want they that same art of words which is necessarily required to those motions in the mind, whereby good is represented to it as being better, and evil as worse than in truth it is. But the tongue of man is a trumpet of war and sedition, and it is reported of Pericles, that he sometimes by his elegant speeches thundered and lightened, and confounded whole Greek itself. Fifthly, they cannot distinguish between injury and harm. Thence it happens that as long as it is well with them, they blame not their fellows. But those men are of most trouble to the republic, who have most leisure to be idle. For they use not to contend for public places, before they have gotten the victory over hunger and cold. Last of all, the consent of those brutal creatures is natural, that of men by compact only, that is to say, artificial. It is therefore no matter of wonder if somewhat more be needful for men to the end that they may live in peace. Wherefore consent or contracted society, without some common power whereby particular men may be ruled through fear of punishment, doth not suffice to make up that security, which is requisite to the exercise of natural justice. 6. Since therefore the conspiring of many wills to the same end doth not suffice to preserve peace, and to make a lasting defense, it is requisite that in those necessary matters which concern peace and self-defense, there be but one will of all men. But this cannot be done, unless every man be so subject his will to some other one, to wit, either man or council, that whatsoever his will is in those things which are necessary to the common peace, it be received for the wills of all men in general, and of every one in particular. Now the gathering together of many men, who deliberate of what is to be done or not to be done for the common good of all men, is that which I call a council. 7. This submission of the wills of all those men to the will of one man or one council is then made, when each one of them obligeth himself by contract every one of the rest, not to resist the will of that one man or council, to which he hath submitted himself. That is, that he refuse him not the use of his wealth and strength against any others whatsoever. For he is supposed still to retain a right of defending himself against violence, and this is called union. But we understand that to be the will of the council, which is the will of the major part of those men of whom the council consists. 8. But though the will itself be not voluntary, but only the beginning of voluntary actions, for we will not to will, but to act, and therefore falls least of all under deliberation and compact, yet he who submits his will to the will of another, conveys to that other the right of his strength and faculties, insomuch as when the rest have done the same, he to whom they have submitted hath so much power, as by the terror of it he can conform the wills of particular men unto unity and concord. 9. Now union thus made is called a city or civil society, and also a civil person. For when there is one will of all men, it is to be esteemed for one person, and by the word one, it is to be known and distinguished from all particular men, as having its own rights and properties. Insomuch as neither any one citizen, nor all of them together, if we accept him whose will stands for the will of all, is to be accounted a city. A city, therefore, that we may define it, is one person, whose will by the compact of many men is to be received for the will of them all, so as he may use all the power and faculties of each particular person to the maintenance of peace and for common defense. 10. But although every city be a civil person, yet every civil person is not a city. For it may happen that many citizens by the permission of the city may join together in one person for the doing of certain things. These now will be civil persons, as the companies of merchants, and many other convents. But cities they are not, because they have not submitted themselves to the will of the company simply and in all things, but in certain things only determined by the city, and on such terms as it is lawful for any one of them to contend in judgment against the body itself of the sodality, which is by no means allowable to a citizen against the city. Such like societies, therefore, are civil persons subordinate to the city. 11. In every city, that man or council to whose will each particular man hath subjected his will so as hath been declared, is said to have the supreme power, or chief command, or dominion. Which power and right of commanding consists in this, that each citizen hath conveyed all his strength and power to that man or council, which to have done, because no man can transfer his power in a natural manner, is nothing else than to have parted with his right of resisting. Each citizen, as also every subordinate civil person, is called subject of him who hath the chief command. 12. By what hath been said, it is sufficiently showed in what manner and by what degrees many natural persons, through desire of preserving themselves and by mutual fear, have grown together into a civil person, whom we have called a city. But they who submit themselves to another from fear, either submit to him whom they fear, or some other whom they confide in for protection. They act according to the first manner, who are vanquished in war, that they may not be slain. They according to the second, who are not yet overcome, that they may not be overcome. The first manner receives its beginning from natural power, and may be called the natural beginning of a city. The latter from the council and constitution of those who meet together, which is a beginning by institution. Hence it is that there are two kinds of cities, the one natural, such as the paternal and despotical, the other institutive, which may also be called political. In the first, the lord acquires to himself such citizens as he will. In the other, the citizens by their own wills appoint a lord over themselves, whether he be one man or one company of men, endued with the command in chief. But we will speak in the first place of a city political or by institution, and next of a city natural. End of section 7. Recording by Jeffrey Church.